Nia pulled the collar of her trench coat tighter around her neck, shielding her camera from the relentless drizzle. Being a street photographer in a city that never truly slept meant learning to become part of the architecture, a shadow within shadows. As a black woman in South Korea, standing out was inevitable in the daylight, but the night was different. The night was democratic. In the dark, everyone was just a silhouette, and right now, Nia was hunting for the perfect shot of urban isolation. She had wandered far from the bustling tourist traps of Myeongdong, finding herself in the industrial labyrinth of the Seongsu district. The warehouses here loomed like skeletal giants, rusting and silent, or so she thought. She turned a corner into a narrow alleyway blocked by a chain-link fence that had been peeled back like a metal wound. Through the gap, she saw movement in the courtyard of an abandoned textile factory. It wasn't the stray cats she usually photographed. Three matte black sedans were parked in a tight formation, their headlights cut, engines humming with a low, predatory vibration. Nia's instinct, honed by years of photojournalism before she retreated to art photography, kicked in. She stepped through the fence, her boots making no sound on the wet concrete. She found a vantage point behind a stack of rotting shipping pallets, raised her camera and adjusted the ISO. The lens was heavy in her hands, a comforting weight. Through the viewfinder, the scene sharpened. A group of men stood in the rain. Most were wearing generic black suits, the uniform of the lower-level K-Campi, but the man in the center was different. He wore a charcoal gray bespoke suit that seemed to repel the rain. He was leaning against the hood of the middle car, lighting a cigarette with a calm, deliberate motion. The flame illuminated his face for a split second, sharp cheekbones, eyes that looked like obsidian glass, and an air of terrifying boredom. This was Min-jun. Even without knowing his name yet, Nia knew he was the gravity holding this scene together. Opposite him, a man on his knees was pleading, his hands bound behind his back. The audio was muddled by the rain, but the body language was universal. This was an execution. Nia's breath hitched, but her finger didn't tremble. She pressed the record button. The shutter was silent. She zoomed in, capturing the way the smoke curled from Min-jun's lips, mixing with the steam rising from the kneeling man's head. Min-jun didn't shout. He didn't wave a gun. He simply nodded. One of the suited men stepped forward and delivered a single, brutal blow to the kneeling man's temple with a baton. The man crumpled. It wasn't a kill, but it was a message. Min-jun crouched down, grabbing the groaning man by the hair, whispering something that made the victim sob uncontrollably. It was cinematic, horrifying, and mesmerizing. Nia was capturing the raw texture of power. She was so focused on the composition, on the way the red taillight bathed Min-jun's profile in blood-colored light, that she didn't notice the puddle shifting behind her. A hand clamped over her mouth, and another arm locked around her throat. The camera was ripped from her grasp before she could even scream. The world tilted violently as she was dragged from her hiding spot and thrown onto the wet pavement of the courtyard. The impact knocked the wind out of her. She gasped, scrambling backward, her hands scraping against the rough stone. The low-level thugs surrounded her instantly, a wall of legs and hostility. She looked up, rain plastering her braids to her face, expecting a gun barrel. Instead, she saw polished leather shoes walking through the circle of men. The circle parted. Min-jun stood over her, holding her camera by the strap. He looked at the device, then down at her, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak Korean to her. He didn't ask who she was. He simply lifted the camera to his eye and pressed the playback button. The small screen illuminated his face. Nia watched him watch her work. The silence stretched, heavier than the humidity. She prepared herself for the end. She calculated the distance to the fence, realizing it was impossible. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Min-jun watched the entire clip, the beating, the threat, the atmosphere. He watched it twice. Then he lowered the camera and looked at her with a strange intensity. "The framing," he said, his voice a deep baritone, his English flawless but accented with a cold precision. "It is artistic." He crouched down so he was eye level with her. Most people shake when they film a crime. You zoomed in on the reflection of the fear in his eyes. You have a steady hand. I'm a photographer, Nia managed to say, her voice shaking more than her hands had. I didn't know, I just saw the lights. You saw the truth, Min-jun corrected softly. He signaled to his men. Two of them hoisted Nia to her feet, gripping her arms tight enough to bruise. Min-jun stood up and walked closer to her, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive tobacco, rain, and metallic ozone. He held the camera out to her, but when she reached for it, he pulled it back slightly. You have evidence of a felony, a kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. I'll delete it, Nia said quickly. I'll format the card, you'll never see me again. Min-jun tilted his head, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. It wasn't a nice smile. If you delete it, you destroy a beautiful piece of cinema. And if I let you go, I have to worry about what you saw with your eyes, not just your lens. Usually, this is the part where you disappear into the Han River. Nia's blood ran cold. She pulled against the men holding her, but they were immovable statues. I'm an American citizen, she bluffed, though her visa was legitimate. People will look for me. People look for things all the time in Seoul and never find them, Min-jun countered. He turned the camera over in his hands, examining the lens. However, I have a problem. My enemies. They are messy. They lack subtlety. I need to document their transgressions to show the elders, to prove their incompetence and their treachery. But my men, he gestured vaguely to the brutes holding her. They are clumsy. They hold a camera like a weapon. The footage is shaky, unusable. It lacks impact. He stepped closer, the rain dripping from his hair. You, on the other hand, you have an eye for the dramatic. You captured the soul of that moment. Nia stared at him, confused and terrified. What are you saying? I am offering you a job, Min-jun said, as casually as if he were offering her a coffee. I need a shadow, someone who can walk into a room and not be seen, or be seen and ignored. A woman, a foreigner. You are visible and invisible at the same time. You will follow the targets I give you. You will film their meetings, their affairs, their betrayals. You will make it look like art so that when I destroy them, I can watch it with pleasure. And if I refuse, Nia whispered. Min-jun didn't answer verbally. He simply looked toward the river, then back at her. The implication hung in the air like smoke. He extended the camera to her again. Take it. If you take it, you work for me. If you don't take it, well, you won't need a camera where you're going. Nia looked at the camera, her livelihood, her passion, and now her lifeline. She looked at the man who was effectively holding a gun to her head while offering her a paycheck. She realized with a jolt of horror that a small, dark part of her was intrigued. The adrenaline was unlike anything she had felt in years. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached out and grasped the body of the camera. Min-jun didn't let go immediately. For a second, they were connected by the device. A circuit closed between her fear and his control. Good choice, he murmured, releasing the camera. Get in the car. We have much to discuss and you are soaking wet. He turned his back on her, exposing his neck, a display of arrogance and absolute confidence that she wouldn't run. And he was right. She couldn't run. She had just signed a contract with the devil in the pouring rain, and the scariest part was that she wanted to see what happened next. The interior of the sedan was a hermetically sealed capsule of silence and leather. The outside world, the rain, the grime of Seongsu, the normalcy of life, blurred into streaks of light through the tinted windows. Nia sat in the corner of the back seat, hugging her camera bag to her chest as if it were a shield. She was shivering, the adrenaline crash mixing with the damp cold of her trench coat. Beside her, Min-jun was typing on a sleek smartphone, the blue light illuminating the sharp angles of his face. He seemed completely unaffected by the violence that had just occurred, or by the fact that he had essentially kidnapped a foreign national. He didn't look at her. But his presence filled the car, a heavy, suffocating gravity. Without looking up, he tapped the partition separating them from the driver. The temperature in the car began to rise instantly, a blast of warm air directed at her side of the cabin. It was a small, confusing mercy. Where are we going? Nia asked, her voice sounding small in the acoustic deadness of the luxury car. To a place where you can dry off, Min-jun replied, finally sliding his phone into his jacket pocket. He turned his head, his dark eyes scanning her face with that same unnerving, analytical precision he had shown in the alley. And where we can discuss the terms of your employment. You are trembling. Is it the cold or the fear? Both, Nia admitted, gripping the strap of her bag tighter. You can't just force people to work for you. This isn't a movie. Everything is a movie, Nia, he said, using her name for the first time. He must have checked her ID while she was being manhandled by his guards. It just depends on who is directing it. Until tonight, you were an extra. Now you have a speaking role. Do not disappoint the audience. The car slowed, turning into the underground garage of a glass needle rising from the heart of Gangnam. The transition from the gritty industrial district to the epicenter of wealth was jarring. They bypassed the lobby, taking a private elevator that required a palm scan from Min-jun. As the numbers climbed, Nia's ears popped. The doors slid open to reveal a penthouse that looked less like a home and more like a museum of modern solitude. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul, the city sprawling out like a circuit board of gold and red. The furniture was sparse, Italian, and uncomfortable looking. Min-jun tossed his jacket onto a chair and walked to a wet bar made of black marble. Whiskey, he offered, clinking ice into a glass. I want to go home, Nia said, standing near the elevator, refusing to step further into his sanctuary. You will, eventually, Min-jun said, pouring the amber liquid. He walked over to her, extending the glass. But first we have work, drink, it will steady your hands. Nia hesitated, then took the glass. She took a large swallow, the burn of the alcohol momentarily grounding her. Min-jun watched her drink, his gaze lingering on her lips for a fraction of a second too long before he turned to the window. My organization is currently suffering from a leak. Information regarding our shipping routes is being sold to a rival clan, the Buk-gu faction. I suspect the leak comes from one of my lieutenants, a man named Kang. But suspicion is not proof, and in my world you cannot execute a lieutenant without proof unless you want a mutiny. So you want me to follow him? Nia asked, the alcohol warming her blood. He is paranoid, Min-jun explained, looking out at the city. He sweeps for bugs, he checks for tails. He knows the faces of everyone in the underworld. If I send one of my men, he will spot them. If I hire a private investigator, he will buy them off or kill them. He turned back to face her. But you are a black woman with a camera. In Korea, you stand out so much that you become invisible. People look at you, they see a tourist, an artist, an outsider. They do not see a threat. They do not see the eyes of Min-jun. He walked over to a sleek console table and picked up a file folder, tossing it onto the sofa. Tomorrow night, Kang is attending a gallery opening in Itaewon. It is a pretentious event, very crowded. He will be meeting his contact there. I need you to attend. I need you to photograph who he speaks to, exchange envelopes with, or even whispers to. And I need it to be high resolution. I need to see the sweat on their upper lips. Nia set the whiskey glass down. The fear was still there, but the professional challenge was beginning to itch at the back of her brain. Itaewon is chaotic. The lighting in galleries is usually terrible for candid shots, spotlights and shadows. If I use a flash, I'm dead. Exactly, Min-jun said, a hint of approval in his voice. That is why I need you. You shoot in the dark. I saw your portfolio on your phone while we drove. You understand how to pull light out of nothing. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them until he was just a foot away. The air between them crackled. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, and for a moment Nia thought he was going to caress her cheek. Instead, he brushed a raindrop from the collar of her coat. The intimacy of the gesture was shocking. You have a debt to pay for seeing what you saw tonight. Do this for me, bring me the face of the traitor, and I will consider the debt settled. You can go back to photographing stray cats and lonely buildings. And if I get caught? Nia asked, her voice barely a whisper, trapped in his gaze. Then pray you are as good at running as you are at framing a shot, Min-jun said coldly. But don't worry, I will be watching, I am always watching. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, heavy object, a new lens far more expensive than anything she could afford. Attach this. It has a longer range. Do not fail me, Nia. He walked past her, dismissing her with the movement, but paused at the hallway leading to the bedrooms. There are dry clothes in the guest room on the left. Shower. Rest. My driver will take you home in the morning. Tonight you stay here. I do not trust you running to the police the moment you are out of my sight. Nia stood alone in the massive living room, the city lights reflecting in the glass, holding the expensive lens. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But as she looked at the lens and then at the closed door where the dangerous, beautiful man had disappeared, she realized her heart wasn't just pounding from fear. It was pounding from the thrill of the game. She was no longer just a spectator in the city. She was now a player, and the stakes were life and death. She walked toward the guest room, the sound of the rain against the glass echoing the rhythm of her racing pulse. The night was far from over. The gallery in Itaewon was named Ethereal, a stark, white-walled box that smelled of champagne and pretension. Outside, the district pulsed with the chaotic energy of Friday night revelers, but inside, the air was refrigerated and hushed. Nia adjusted the strap of her dress, a sleek, midnight blue slip dress Min-jun had provided, which made her feel dangerously exposed compared to her usual trench coat. She blended into the shadowed corners of the room, holding her camera like a weapon. To the casual observer, she was just another hired photographer capturing the socialites and the abstract art. In reality, she was hunting. She spotted Lieutenant Kang near a sculpture that looked like twisted rebar. He was sweating. It was a subtle sheen on his forehead that the gallery's aggressive track lighting unforgivingly highlighted. He looked out of place among the art crowd, his suit too boxy, his eyes darting too frequently toward the entrance. Nia raised her camera, feigning interest in a woman with blue hair laughing nearby, but her focus was locked on the background, on Kang. The new lens Min-jun had given her was a revelation. It cut through the dim mood lighting with surgical precision. Through the viewfinder, Nia watched Kang check his watch for the third time. Then a man approached him. He was older, wearing a white linen suit that screamed money laundering rather than art collector. They didn't shake hands. They didn't bow. They stood shoulder to shoulder, pretending to admire the sculpture. Nia held her breath. She needed the transfer. She needed the betrayal. The man in white passed a catalog to Kang. Kang slid a thick brown envelope into the man's jacket pocket. It was over in 2 seconds. A blink-and-you-miss-it moment. But Nia didn't blink. Her finger held the shutter down in a silent burst, capturing 20 frames of the transaction. The envelope, the faces, the guilt. She had it. She lowered the camera, her heart hammering against her ribs, and turned to leave. That was when her luck ran out. A flash from another guest's phone camera went off nearby, blindingly bright. In the sudden glare, the lens of Nia's camera caught the light, creating a sharp reflection that cut across the room. Kang turned. His eyes locked onto hers. For a moment there was confusion, then recognition. He remembered the alleyway. He remembered the girl who had seen too much. "Stop her," Kang shouted, abandoning all subtlety. He shoved a waiter aside, crashing through the crowd toward her. Nia didn't wait. She kicked off her high heels, leaving them on the polished concrete floor, and sprinted. The crowd gasped, parting like the Red Sea as she bolted toward the service exit she had scouted earlier. She burst through the heavy fire doors into the humid, trash-strewn alleyway behind the building. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slick with oil and water. She could hear the heavy footsteps of Kang's men crashing through the door behind her. She ran blindly, turning left, then right, weaving through the labyrinth of Itaewon's back streets. She was gasping for air, her bare feet splashing in puddles, the expensive camera clutched tight to her chest. She reached the main road, the traffic a blur of red and yellow lights. A black sedan screeched to a halt right in front of her, the back door flying open before the wheels even stopped rolling. It wasn't a taxi. "Get in," a voice commanded from the darkness of the backseat. Nia didn't hesitate. She dove into the car, and the driver floored it, throwing her back against the leather seats as they sped away, leaving the shouting men on the sidewalk behind them. She struggled to sit up, brushing her wet hair out of her face. Min-jun was sitting next to her, calm and immaculate as always. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite place: amusement, pride, hunger. "You lost your shoes," he noted, his gaze dropping to her bare, dirty feet, then traveling slowly up her legs to her heaving chest. "I got the shot," Nia panted, ignoring his comment. She fumbled with the camera, bringing up the display. Her hands were shaking, but the image on the screen was crisp. Kang passing the envelope, the face of the buyer clearly visible. Min-jun took the camera from her. He looked at the photos in silence, scrolling through them one by one. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. Nia waited for him to criticize her, to tell her she was sloppy for getting spotted. Instead, he handed the camera back and looked at her. "Efficient. The man in the white suit is from the Buk-gu faction. You have just signed Kang's death warrant." "He saw me," Nia whispered, the adrenaline beginning to curdle into fear. "He knows I'm working for you now, if you hadn't been there." "I am always where I need to be," Min-jun said. He reached into the cooler console and pulled out a bottle of water, twisting the cap off before handing it to her. "You did well, Nia. Better than my trained men. They would have started a shootout in the gallery. You got the evidence and you vanished." He leaned closer, invading her personal space. The scent of him, tobacco, rain, and power, was overwhelming in the confined space. He reached out and brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek with his thumb. His skin was cool, his touch surprisingly gentle, contrasting with the violence of his words. "You are a natural chaos agent," he murmured, his eyes locking onto hers. "I think I am going to enjoy this partnership. But now Kang knows your face. You can't go back to your apartment. It's not safe." Nia froze, the water bottle halfway to her lips. "What? No, I have my life there, my equipment, my cat." "My men are already collecting your things," Min-jun said dismissively. "And the cat. You are staying with me until this war is over." "I didn't agree to that," Nia protested, though her voice lacked conviction. Min-jun smiled, a slow, predatory curving of his lips that made her stomach flip. "You captured the king's traitor, Nia. You are part of the court now, and the king keeps his treasures close." He tapped the partition. "Home." As the car sped toward the river, Nia realized she wasn't just a witness anymore. She was an accomplice. And as she looked at Min-jun, watching the city lights dance in his dark eyes, she realized the most dangerous thing wasn't the man chasing her, but the man sitting right beside her. 3 days in the penthouse felt like 3 years in a very expensive, very lonely orbit. Nia had explored every inch of the glass fortress, from the temperature-controlled wine cellar to the library filled with first editions that looked like they had never been opened. Her cat, a scruffy rescue named Kodama, had adapted far better than she had, currently sleeping on a cashmere throw worth more than Nia's entire camera gear collection. Nia spent her time at the dining table, her laptop open, obsessively retouching the photos from the gallery. She turned the exposure down, brought the contrast up, making Kang's betrayal look like a Caravaggio painting, dark, dramatic, and damning. The elevator chimed, a sound that made Nia jump every time. Min-jun walked in, looking different tonight. He wasn't wearing his armor. The pristine suit jacket was gone, his tie was undone, and the sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up to his elbows. There was a smear of dried blood on his knuckles that he hadn't bothered to wash off. He looked exhausted, the weight of his empire pressing down on his shoulders. "Is he dead?" Nia asked, not looking up from her screen, though her heart rate spiked. "Kang is elusive," Min-jun said, walking past her to the kitchen. He didn't pour alcohol this time, he poured a glass of water. "He went underground before my men could secure the perimeter. He knows I have the photos. He knows his reputation is ruined. A rat with no hole is a dangerous thing." He walked over to the table and looked at the screen. He stood behind her, his presence a wall of heat against her back. He leaned down, bracing his hands on the table on either side of her, effectively trapping her in her chair. He wasn't looking at the photo of Kang. He was looking at her reflection in the darkened glass of the balcony door. "You haven't tried to leave," he murmured near her ear. "You have guards at the lobby," Nia replied, her voice steady despite the proximity. "And you have my passport." "True," Min-jun conceded. "But you haven't tried to run. You are still editing, still working. Why?" Nia turned her chair slowly to face him. They were inches apart. "Because I want to see how the movie ends," she whispered, echoing his words from the first night. "And because I've never taken pictures that felt this important before. It's terrifying, but it's real." Min-jun stared at her, his dark eyes searching her face. The cold, calculating mask he wore for the world slipped, revealing a raw intensity beneath. "You are the only real thing in this city of plastic and neon, Nia." He reached out, cupping her face with his hand, the one with the bruised knuckles. His thumb traced her lower lip. The air in the room seemed to vanish. The violence of their meeting, the danger of the gallery, the forced proximity, it all culminated in this single, silent moment. Nia didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch, drawn to the darkness in him like a moth to a flame. Min-jun kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It was acclaiming. He kissed her with the same precision and dominance he applied to his business, but there was a desperate hunger underneath it. Nia responded, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. For a minute, they weren't a crime boss and a witness. They were just two lonely people finding an anchor in the storm. The moment was shattered by a sound louder than thunder. The floor-to-ceiling window in the living room exploded inward, showering the room with millions of diamonds of safety glass. Kodama screeched and bolted under the sofa. Min-jun reacted instantly. He didn't freeze. He moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Nia, tackling her to the floor behind the heavy marble kitchen island just as a hail of bullets tore through the space where they had been standing seconds ago. Plaster and wood chips rained down on them. "Stay down," Min-jun roared, pulling a handgun from the back of his waistband, a weapon Nia hadn't even noticed he was carrying. "What is happening?" Nia screamed, covering her head as another volley of gunfire decimated the espresso machine above them. "Kang," Min-jun spat, checking the magazine of his gun. "He didn't run. He came for the head of the snake." The lights in the penthouse cut out, plunging them into darkness. The only illumination came from the city lights outside and the tactical flashlights sweeping through the broken window. The wind whipped through the apartment, carrying the smell of rain and cordite. "Listen to me," Min-jun said, grabbing Nia's arm, his grip bruising. "There is a panic room behind the library bookshelf. Go, lock it from the inside. Do not open it for anyone but me." "I'm not leaving you," Nia said, surprising herself. She grabbed her camera from the table, instinctively checking the lens cap. "You need eyes. You can't see them all." Min-jun looked at her, frustration and admiration warring in his gaze. "This isn't a photo shoot, Nia. They are here to kill us." "Then give them a reason to fear the dark," she countered, her fear transmuted into cold focus. She crawled toward the edge of the island, raising her camera. "I'll use the flash. I can blind them, distract them." Min-jun looked at the shadows moving near the broken window. He nodded once. A grim acceptance of their insane partnership. "On my signal, flash and move. Do not stop moving." He racked the slide of his gun. "Now." Nia popped up, aiming her camera at the approaching tactical squad. She hit the shutter. The high-powered external flash exploded in the dark room like a supernova, blindingly white. The intruders screamed, dazzled by the strobe effect. Pop, pop, pop. Min-jun fired 3 shots, taking down the 2 lead attackers while they were disoriented. But more were rappelling down from the roof. "Move!" Min-jun grabbed her hand and they scrambled across the glass-strewn floor toward the hallway. They weren't running to the panic room anymore. They were cut off. They were running for their lives, deeper into the trap with nothing but a gun, a camera, and each other. The heavy oak doors of the master's suite slammed shut, Min-jun throwing the deadbolt just as a body slammed against the other side. The sanctuary was temporary. They were trapped in the highest tower of the castle, and the wolves were at the door. Min-jun leaned against the wood, breathing heavily. A dark stain was spreading on the white shirt near his left shoulder, a graze from a bullet during their sprint down the hall. He looked at Nia, who was clutching her camera, her chest heaving, her eyes wide but surprisingly clear. There was no hysteria in her, only a cold, sharp focus that mirrored his own. "There is no other exit," Min-jun said, his voice ragged. "The balcony has a drop of 40 floors." He checked his gun. The slide locked back, empty. He swore softly in Korean and tossed the useless weapon onto the bed, reaching into his boot for a jagged, serrated combat knife. "When they breach, I will take the first one. You run for the elevator. Don't look back." "I'm not running," Nia said, her voice trembling but resolute. She stepped closer to him, ignoring the sounds of the wood splintering behind him. "You said I was the director now. The director stays until the final cut." "Nia, this isn't." The door exploded inward with a deafening crash. Min-jun spun around, knife raised, placing his body between Nia and the entrance. Through the smoke and debris, Lieutenant Kang stepped in. He looked manic, his suit torn, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He was alone. His men were likely dead or holding the perimeter. He held a silenced pistol, leveling it directly at Min-jun's chest. "The great Min-jun," Kang sneered, stepping over the ruined doorframe. "Hiding in a bedroom with his whore while his empire burns." "My empire is made of loyalty," Min-jun said calmly, though his grip on the knife tightened. "You have none, Kang. That is why you will die tonight." "I have the gun," Kang smiled, a grotesque expression. "And you brought a knife, how poetic." He shifted his aim slightly, pointing the barrel at Nia. "Maybe I'll kill her first. Watch you break before I end you." Min-jun tensed to lunge, a suicide move to cover the distance, but Nia moved first. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She stepped out from behind Min-jun's shadow, raising her camera. The movement was so unexpected, so absurd in the face of death, that Kang hesitated. His eyes flicked to her, confused. "What are you doing?" Kang barked. "Smile," Nia whispered. She didn't use the flash this time. She didn't need to blind him, she needed to unnerve him. She pressed the record button, the red tally light blinking in the dim room. "Every second of this is streaming to the cloud," she lied, her voice steady. "The elders are watching. They are watching you betray the code. Killing him won't make you boss, Kang. It will just make you a dead man walking." For a split second, Kang's arrogance faltered. Paranoia, the thief's eternal companion, flickered in his eyes. He glanced at the camera lens, the unblinking eye of judgment. That split second of distraction was all Min-jun needed. He moved like a viper. He closed the distance in 2 strides, knocking the gun barrel upward just as Kang fired. The bullet shattered the ceiling plaster. Min-jun drove his shoulder into Kang's chest, slamming him against the wall. The knife flashed in the moonlight. It was brutal, efficient, and silent. Kang slumped to the floor, the gun clattering from his hand. Min-jun stood over him for a moment, chest heaving, ensuring the threat was neutralized. Then, the adrenaline crashed. He dropped the knife and turned to Nia. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire. The only sound was the wind whistling through the broken windows in the living room down the hall. Nia lowered the camera. Her hands finally started to shake. Min-jun walked over to her, ignoring his bleeding shoulder. He took the camera from her hands and set it gently on the bed, then pulled her into him. His arms were iron bands, holding her as if she were the only solid thing in the universe. She buried her face in his neck, smelling the metallic tang of blood and the rain. "You lied," Min-jun murmured into her hair, a vibration she felt against her chest. "The camera doesn't stream to the cloud." "He didn't know that," Nia choked out, a half-sob escaping her. "It was a bluff." Min-jun pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were dark, intense, and filled with something that terrified her more than the bullets: absolute devotion. You saved my life. You are not just a witness anymore, Nia. You are my partner. There is no going back from this." "I know," she whispered. She reached up, touching the side of his face, her thumb brushing over a smear of soot on his cheekbone. "I don't want to go back." The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, rising from the streets of Seoul below. The cleanup crew, either the police or Min-jun's lawyers, would be here soon. The world would try to intrude, to sanitize the mess, to put them in boxes. But in that wrecked penthouse, amidst the ruin of his old life, Min-jun realized he had found the one thing he had never planned for. He kissed her, tasting the salt of her tears and the promise of a dangerous future. "Then stay," he said against her lips. "Be my eyes. Watch the shadows with me." Nia pulled away slightly, reaching for her camera again. She turned it on, checking the settings, her photographer's instinct overriding the trauma. She looked at Min-jun, bloodied, beautiful, and alive. "I'm not just watching the shadows," she said, lifting the viewfinder to her eye and framing him against the shattered skyline of the city that was now theirs. "I'm bringing them into the light." The shutter clicked. It was the first shot of their new story.